Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 8th of January. I'm Mark Broome at ARIRANG's News Centre in Seoul. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines at this hour. Korea's foreign minister implies Japan is opening up historical wounds that stand in the way of reconciliation and cooperation in Northeast Asia. The US agrees to work with Seoul to alleviate the tension and promote peace and cooperation. As Seoul awaits a response from Pyongyang for its proposal to resume reunions of families separated since the Korean War, South Korea says it will not link the suspended joint Mount Geumgangsan tour issue to the family meetings. Plus, the first batch of chemical arms materials has been transported out of Syria for destruction as part of the UN-backed deal to eliminate the country's chemical arsenal. Korea has delivered its message to the US that history disputes remain a stumbling block to improving relations in Northeast Asia. Following a meeting with US Secretary of State John Kerry in Washington Tuesday, Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se said the current situation in the region calls for sincere actions, adding that the two agreed on the need to alleviate tensions. While neither Yoon nor Kerry directly mentioned Japan, the comments are almost certainly aimed at Tokyo as they come just weeks after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the highly controversial Yasukuni Shrine escalated tensions with Korea and China. The shrine honors Japan's war dead, including several Class A war criminals. The two officials also agreed to deal sternly with any possible North Korean provocations, with Kerry calling on Pyongyang to choose the path of denuclearization. And no response yet from Pyongyang to President Park Geunhyes' New Year's proposal for family reunions. Even as North Korea continues to digest the proposal, experts say the fact the president made the offer is likely to go some way to mending soured ties. Han Da-eun reports.
Following in the footsteps of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's friendly New Year's message, President Park Geun-hye also made a conciliatory gesture on Monday, suggesting a resumption of inter-Korean family reunions for those separated since the Korean War. Pyongyang unilaterally and abruptly canceled reunions planned for September, just days before they were to take place. So could President Park's proposal serve as the touchstone for friendlier inter-Korean relations this year? Experts say yes.
I think the proposal will serve as momentum to improve strained inter-Korean ties. President Park did urge North Korea to abandon its nuclear program, but overall, her speech has left the door open for dialogue. North Korea doesn't want further tensions now either, as it's weathering some internal instability.
Seoul's Unification Ministry, however, made clear on Tuesday that the issue of family reunions will not be linked to the halted inter-Korean tourism project near Mount Geumgangsan. The announcement is being interpreted by many as a way to block North Korea from taking advantage of family reunions to restart tourism operations. Seoul maintains the stance that tours to the Mount Geumgang resort will not resume unless Pyongyang claims responsibility for shooting a South Korean tourist dead in 2008. But some experts say the issue of the Mount Geumgangsan project won't get in the way of restarting inter-Korean dialogue.
Even if North Korea attempts to mix the two issues, I think the two sides will be able to find middle ground, as they've now both entered a phase of seeking out dialogue.
Analysts also add Seoul's latest offer will serve as a barometer of North Korea's sincerity in mending ties with the South. Han Da-eun, ARIRANG News.
Former NBA star Dennis Rodman has never shied away from controversy, but he took things to a new level, even for him, on Tuesday, having a complete meltdown on CNN when asked about a missionary detained in North Korea. When the CNN anchor asked Rodman whether he would use his visit to North Korea to raise the case of Kenneth Bae, a Korean-American tour guide who has been imprisoned in North Korea for over a year on vague charges of hostile acts against the state, Rodman erupted into a foul-mouthed rant in which he said Bae deserved to be serving time. He also tried to defend his heavily criticized basketball diplomacy tour. Rodman is currently in Pyongyang for an exhibition game against the North Korean national team on Wednesday. in what they are saying is a birthday present for North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The South Korean government has been laying out some ambitious economic plans which are primarily focused on boosting incomes and creating jobs. Hwang Ji-ae takes a look at what's ahead in 2014.
During a meeting with economic policymakers on Tuesday, Korea's Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok reiterated the government's 3-year economic innovation plan. Under the plan, the country's growth potential is expected to grow to around 4%, and the annual per capita income is forecast to exceed $30,000, with sights on reaching 40,000. The government also aims to achieve a 70% employment rate.
We will come up with a roadmap for the 3-year economic innovation plan by the end of February.
Although experts say the goals that make up the plan are not easily attainable, they add that it's not impossible. But in order to get there, they point to the importance of boosting domestic demand.
Export industries that local companies mainly concentrate on have a limited impact on the domestic economy, since they create fewer than expected jobs. It's now important to boost the domestic demand, in particular by strengthening the nation's service sector.
Regarding the growth prospects for this year, economists cite a number of major risks stemming from the global economy that could affect the domestic economy. That includes the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision last month to taper its $85 billion per month bond-buying stimulus measures, the slowing Chinese economy, and Abenomics in Japan, which is pushing the Japanese yen lower while eroding the price competitiveness of Korean exporters.
The current trend of the weakening Japanese yen will hurt Korea's exporters and could eventually lead to a reduction in Korea's overall growth rate by 0.1 percentage points per year.
In terms of uncertainties at home, the snowballing household debt problem and the sluggish real estate market are cited as major variables that could cut the nation's growth rate. Experts say, however, that the recovery we're seeing in advanced nations is still a good sign for the Korean economy. Hwang Ji-ae, ARIRANG News.
As part of President Park's economic vision, the government's push to ease investment regulations in the service sector to boost domestic demand is showing some signs of progress. But as our Gwon So-ah reports, challenges remain and dissenting voices are growing louder.
A bill proposed to ease regulations for industrial complex investments was passed at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, one day after President Park Geun-hye placed an emphasis on boosting domestic demand by deregulating the service sector.
올해 투자 관련 규제를 백지 상태에서 전면 재검토해서 꼭 필요한 규제가 아니면 모두 풀겠습니다.
As another follow-up measure to President Park's plan, the ruling Saenuri Party said on Tuesday that it will focus on passing laws related to streamlining regulations at a parliamentary extra session scheduled for February. They say about 20 bills were pushed back in 2013. According to the party's think tank, merely passing the pending bills could bump up the nation's economic growth rate by 0.4%. One of the bills the Saenuri Party proposed last year was related to a zoning law that says no hotels can be built within 200 meters of an elementary, middle, or high school. The Ministry of Strategy and Finance expects that lifting the restriction could result in 60 new hotels in the country and about 47,000 new jobs. However, the main opposition Democratic Party stood in opposition to the bill, claiming it would damage the environment for education. Another pending law would allow casinos to be built and operate on Korean cruise lines, a move designed to attract more foreign tourists to the country. The Democratic Party, however, said the change could lead to a growth in gambling addiction. The party also expressed concerns that President Park's aim of easing investment regulations is a move towards privatization, especially in the health sector, something that could lead to a rise in medical costs, a drop in quality, and polarization among economic classes. President Park, meanwhile, will be leading the ministerial meeting for the regulation reforms herself. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
New data from Korea's central bank shows that nationwide household debt grew at a faster clip in 2013 as Korean households plunge further and further into debt. Concerns are rising though the growing financial burden may hurt domestic demand. Paul Lee has the details.
The Bank of Korea released data on Tuesday showing that the country's household debt reached an all-time high last year. Outstanding household lending by local banks and non-bank financial institutions totaled a record $639.5 billion as of the end of November. The increase of $4.7 billion from October marks the largest monthly gain in 5 months since a nearly $6.2 billion on-month advance in June. The central bank says the growth in mortgage loans expanded due in part to an increase in housing transactions during the cited period. The latest tally shows that Korean households are feeling the burden of massive debt. The nation's household credit, which includes bank loans and purchases on credit, hit a fresh high of over $931 billion as of the end of September. At this current pace, that figure is expected to surpass about $940 billion by November. And compared to 2004, the nation's household debt level has more than doubled. Other statistics have shown that Korean households have also lost their spending power. Household debt against disposable income rose to 136% last year, the highest ratio in a decade. The new data comes ahead as BOK policymakers are scheduled to hold a rate-setting session for January on Thursday. Analysts widely expect the central bank to freeze the key interest rate at 2.5% for the 8th consecutive month. Paul Yi, ARIRANG News.
Samsung Electronics, Asia's biggest technology company, has turned in a disappointing earnings report for the fourth quarter of last year. And with Apple poised to extend its reach into the Chinese market later this month, experts say Samsung will have to breathe fresh life into its mobile division. Yulian reports.
The world's largest smartphone maker surprised analysts with its lower-than-expected earnings announcement. Samsung Electronics said Tuesday that its operating profits reached 8.3 trillion won, or roughly $7.8 billion in the October to December period. This falls far short of the most bearish outlook of $8.2 billion and also represents the company's lowest quarterly profit in more than a year.
The profit rate fell sharply in the smartphone sector. As competition grew fierce in China, the company saw high marketing costs. It also had to set aside funds to pay for fines in connection to lawsuits with Apple.
Analysts also point to the bonus payments to employees as another reason. They were given out to mark the 20th anniversary since Samsung chairman Lee Geun-hye set out an ambitious roadmap to turn his company into a global technology leader. Looking ahead, analysts say Samsung Electronics will do better this quarter than last on the back of strong semiconductor sales. But it seems that the era of explosive profits fueled by the tech giant's cutting-edge smartphones is over. While the company still faces hefty marketing costs, it now faces pressure to offer smartphones that aren't just better, but cheaper as well. It appears inevitable that profits will decline as its average selling prices continue to slide amid increased competition from low-cost smartphones. Analysts forecast single-digit growth or a slight contraction for the company's mobile division this year. On top of that, Apple's fierce marketing strategies loom as another threat this year. Starting late next week, Apple will enter China's $80 billion market, challenging Samsung's tight grip on the market there. Apple is also expected to start selling smartphones with larger screens near the end of the year, putting it in direct competition with Samsung's Galaxy Note series. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
The first batch of chemical weapons materials left Syria on Tuesday, the first step of a UN-backed deal to rid the country of its deadly chemical arsenal. The UN and the International Chemical Weapons Watchdog responsible for ensuring the weapons destruction said the materials were loaded onto a Danish vessel and left the northern part of Latakia. A US naval vessel will ultimately take the cargo out to international waters where the materials will be destroyed. The mission is part of a UN deal brokered by Russia and the US that aims to eliminate Syria's chemical arsenal by the middle of this year. The deal came in response to the chemical weapons attack last August that killed hundreds of civilians. The coldest weather to grip North America in decades, caused by a blast of air from the so-called polar vortex, is spreading south and east across the continent. The bone-chilling temperatures shattered records Tuesday, with the mercury plunging to minus 27 degrees in Chicago and to minus 14 degrees Celsius in Georgia, making it the coldest day the southeastern state has seen in 44 years. Montana recorded the coldest temperature, though, with the wind chill making it feel like minus 53 degrees Celsius. Schools have been shut down, people urged to stay indoors, and road, rail and particularly air travel have turned into a nightmare, with more than 4,300 flights cancelled, nearly half of those actually in Chicago. More than a dozen deaths have been linked to the extremely dangerous low temperatures. These smog-filled skies above China are a visible reminder of the heavy price the nation is paying for its rapid economic development. A recently released medical report suggests as many as 500,000 people are dying each and every year in China due to air pollution. Connie Kim has the details.
The smog-cloaked skylines of Chinese cities aren't just an eyesore, they're affecting the health of Chinese citizens. A report published in the Lancet Medical Journal says that air pollution in China is responsible for between 350,000 to 500,000 premature deaths every year. Former Chinese Health Minister Chen Zhu and the co-authors of the report used information from the World Bank and the World Health Organization that included real-time air monitoring data across cities. Recognizing the growing problem, the Chinese government has invested $280 billion to crack down on major polluters. The measures are expected to cut down premature deaths in the nation by up to 200,000 annually. But there is no easy fix. While industrial and coal plants, along with vehicles, are known to be the major polluters, Chen, the author of the study, said the multiple sources of pollution in China make it difficult to control. The smog belt in China had been mainly confined to the capital city of Beijing, but it has rapidly expanded to other cities like Shanghai and Nanjing. On Wednesday, the Chinese government issued its highest-level smog warning in the northern and central regions and advised people to avoid outdoor activities. It's a growing problem that doesn't just affect China. The Korean government issued fine dust warnings for the first time ever in December after it blew over across the West Sea, and additional warnings have come in recent weeks. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Russia has put its security forces in Sochi on combat alert with exactly 1 month before the start of the Winter Olympics. 2 recent suicide bomb attacks in the nearby city of Volgograd has put the country on edge, and Russian President Vladimir Putin wants to ensure the games run without incident. The clearest threat comes from Islamist groups, particularly Chechen rebel leader Doku Umarov, who has publicly called on militants to use, quote, maximum force to prevent the games going ahead. As part of the tight security, cars without local license plates or special permits are not allowed to enter the city or go near Olympic facilities, and visitors must register with local authorities within 3 days or they risk being thrown out. More than 30,000 police and soldiers are also on the ground to help the other 7,000 security personnel secure the area. Back here in Korea, and a papal visit could be on the horizon. The Korean Catholic Church says Pope Francis is keen to visit Korea in the summer or fall. If he does make the trip, Francis would be the first pontiff to visit the country in 25 years. Shin Se-min reports.
A Korean Catholic Church spokesperson said Tuesday that a visit by Pope Francis to Korea could come sometime in August or October, when 2 separate major Catholic events will be held in the nation. The 6th Asian Youth Day will be hosted in Daejeon in August, while 2 months later, a ceremony to beatify 124 Korean Catholic martyrs could be held. Pope Francis is currently reviewing the case for beatification for Paul Yoon-ji Chung and his 123 companions who were tortured and killed in 1791 for practicing their faith. The Catholic Church of Korea has been requesting that Pope Francis visit the country since shortly after he was inaugurated last year, and said it has been receiving positive feedbacks from the Vatican. If Pope Francis does make the trip, it will be the first papal visit to Korea since Pope John Paul II came in 1989. Along with Pope's possible visit, there is speculation that a Korean archbishop may be created a cardinal at an appointment ceremony at the Vatican next month. And if appointed, that person would be the third Korean cardinal ever. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off on the ice. Now with the Sochi Winter Games right around the corner, speed skater Lee Sang-hwa went into her final tune-up at the 44th KSU President's Cup's National Speed Skating Competition on Monday. Now the Vancouver gold medalist at the 500-meter women's event finished first with a time of 38.11 seconds, putting her preparations for the Sochi Games on the right track. While the final time is well short of her world record time of 36.36 seconds, she seems to be in great form. The 25-year-old hopes to work on her conditioning and stay in shape for the next month. And staying on winter sports, for the first time ever, a Korean has won gold medal in the skeleton event as Yoon Sung-bin finished first with a time of 1 minute 45.73 seconds at the 6th round of the Intercontinental Cup in Canada. Now the 20-year-old hopes to use this momentum over to the Sochi Winter Games as fans in Korea hope for another surprise win next month. All right, with that said, moving on to some Tuesday night KBL action, we take a look at the Ulsan Mobis Phoebus take on Anyang KGC. And of course, going into the game here, first quarter of the game, Moon Tae-young leading the way for Mobis as he puts up 12 points in the quarter as Mobis takes a slim 22-21 lead before going into halftime with a 35-33 lead. Now the second half of the game is as tight as ever, but thanks to Rod Benson's 11 points in the third, Mobis extends their lead to 3 points going into the fourth. Now KGC just unable to catch up to Mobis in this game as Mobis hangs on to take this game 69-66. And now finishing things off with some Tuesday night's V-League action as Russian cast Vespid hope to pull off an upset win over the Korean Air Jumbos. And taking a look at the highlights here, despite 11 errors in the first set, Russian Cash's offense looking great from the start as they take the first set 25-23. But those errors look to be costly later in the game as Korean Air answers back with the next three sets, taking the second, third, and the fourth set 25-21, 25-19, and 25-18, with Michael Sanchez putting up 34 points on the night. But the biggest difference in this game is Korean Air posting up 15 blocks on the night as they take this game 3-1. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
And time now to check in on the weather conditions in Korea and around the world. And that's all for now. Thanks ever so much for joining us. We'll be back at noon, Korea time. But in the meantime, you can always catch up with what's been happening news-wise on our website at arirang.co.kr/news.